1.2. Okay, boys, let's take a look at it. Give me a second here. That's what a real woman looks like right there. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, here we go. Wow. Should be fine. Okay.
Patch 1.2, named Mysteries of Moradon, was World of Warcraft's first content patch, releasing only 6 weeks after the base game on the 18th of December 2004. It introduced Moradon, a large new dungeon that bulked out Desolace, focusing in on the origin lore of the Centaur, where Zatar, son of Cenarius, and Veridis' pairing resulted in the creation of the entire Centaur race. And
wait, what?
Large new dungeon that bulked out Desolace, focusing in on the origin lore of the Centaur, where Zatar, son of Cenarius, and Veridis' pairing resulted.
Pairing?
On the origin lore of the Centaur, where Zatar, son of Cenarius, and
Can you imagine how disappointed Cenarius must be? His kid's out there fucking, like, fat-ass rocks, man. Like, what the hell? What the fuck, man? I didn't even know this.
Veridis' pairing resulted in the creation of the entire Centaur race,
and now,
many years later, Moradon is the center of her grief. This was a large 3-wing dungeon intended for players between levels 40 and 49, with the 3 wings being spread across that level bracket. It, and the quests that came along with it, heavily bolstered the gameplay and the lore of Desolace in Western Kalimdor, a place that, without this patch's contents, was definitely a good bit closer to unfinished. Realistically, it's quite easy to argue that Moradon was really intended for launch and missed the deadline, but this was a wildly different era, and World of Warcraft shipped with more content than really anyone could have burnt through that quickly. Even leveling to 60 at maximum speed with heavy optimizations, which very few people did at this time, took about 6 whole days /played. Many players took months to get through the game, rather than the days that we're used to now. While Blizzard was certainly cutting it close with content, like with the raids of patch 1.1, this was a substantial addition, especially given how difficult and sprawling the higher level dungeons of World of Warcraft were. As we'll later see with this series in the future patches, dungeons in the game were truly designed to be adventures. Information on them was...
That's the way it used to be, dude. I love that. Like, I don't like how dungeons now are just designed to be speedrun. They started doing this on, like, BC. And, like, nowadays, all the dungeons are, like, designed with Mythic Plus in mind. And I wish that we had dungeons like Moradon, dungeons like BRD, and these other larger dungeons that are more expansive, and it feels like you're actually going into something rather than just basically going through a loot simulation with, like, certain fights. It just feels like much more of a game. And, like, the old dungeons, Mechagon is really big. It is. I think Mechagon is almost... Is Mechagon... I don't know. I mean, like...
It's there.
Yeah, it's there. Mechagon is good, okay? Like, I don't want to rule out Mechagon, but Mechagon is also, like, a very linear dungeon in the same way, besides the first 3 bosses. So I just like to see more dungeons like BRD, like more very, very large mega dungeons, not just 8 bosses so you can take 2 of the wings and make them Mythic Plus dungeons, but like actual, like, large-scale dungeons.
Sparse, and the game itself usually offered no more than a quest chain teasing the lore and setting up the enemy. And given the freeform design and the varying utility of the classes in the game at this time, it was a much less tailored experience, one that varied wildly from party to party. You and your friends would have your own story to tell based on how your group faced the challenges within, and that's part of what made the dungeon delving experience of early World of Warcraft so darn memorable. This was the first major addition to the game, and it was the first time that many new or younger players will have booted up a game and actually found it to be different. In this case, sure, it was nothing extreme, but this would have been a relatively new experience to a lot of players in the early 2000s.
That's actually a good point.
WoW players opened the launcher to have a sizable download and a list of things that were changed and new. A free update to the game, one that fixed loads of teething issues and added a whole new dungeon. This came at a good time too, as the subscription cost on top of a full-priced release, that was asking for quite a lot. Of course, World of Warcraft had so much content that was entirely justified, but this kind of patch really would have alleviated people's fears. Their subscription cost was clearly not going to waste, and it does in fact give you this access to a changing and evolving world, getting better only a few weeks after launch. This was the major feature of patch.
I guess that would be kind of crazy for people back then, right? Because like back in the day, like you just fucking play Counter-Strike, and then eventually they'd bring out a new Counter-Strike, or like, you know, you play Mario and eventually there's a new Mario that comes out. But besides that, I mean, there's not really a whole lot else to it. So like you think about like EverQuest, well, there are many of them that, you know, didn't play EverQuest, for example. And so like, yeah, I feel like that would be very different for like most people. Like WoW was a lot of people's first MMORPG. For people asking, I wasn't really planning on doing Mythic EP today, since Classic is coming right back out, and I was kind of waiting. I know that some people have been asking about that in my raid team that we were doing. I'm not planning on doing it today, since Classic's just going to be out in a couple of days. I need to take a piss. I will be right back, then we'll start the video again, okay? Right back. Just a second.
Yo, chat, what up? What up? Hey. I think Thorn's builds suck. Like, I hate that it's ever good. If a Thorn's build is ever good, I hate it. It's like, I don't like Thorns in WoW either. I think it's kind of bullshit. Because you have to, like, pay attention to this shit, but it's whatever. Invoker Pog. Yeah, dude. And thank you again, guys, for everything today. I fucking do appreciate it, man.
We're good? Alright, we're good. Okay, let's get this back.
1.2, but there were two other headliners. First off, cloaks and helms could now be hidden from the interface menu.
Ooh,
now, this was a feature that many made use of, given how badly cloaks
would clip,
and how helms would hide most of the decisions made during character creation. Fundamentally, though, this was Blizzard reacting
so if you fucked up during character creation, you just put on a helmet.
Further change their experience to make it their own, and this is a trend that largely did define this era. Given how this was implemented in a rather inelegant way, simply being a checkbox in the interface menu, well, I guess substance over style helped define the game at this era too.
That worked for years,
really
that was fine.
Blizzard thinking of a solution and
I didn't have a problem with that.
It. Then the next major feature in 1.2 was an event, the Feast of Great Winter, just in time for the real world Christmas. And I don't think I need to explain how magical Ironforge would have looked, fully decked out with holly and the decorative trees at this time. A magnificent experience for those new to online games, despite not being very serious. You can
So I think like that's one of the things is like nowadays everybody just kind of like expects this shit to happen. But whenever we're looking at like this old stuff, there's a lot of people that are probably thinking to themselves, oh, this isn't a big deal. Like all this shit's already in the game now. It's like whatever. But you have to remember, like in the context of it being 2004 or 2005, people didn't have these expectations of games yet. People just weren't, you know, used to seeing these kinds of things. So whenever Blizzard would do something like this, it was really cool. Oops.
Imagine sitting down to a cup of hot chocolate, logging in, defeating the Green Schwile, taking in the atmosphere, both in Azeroth and outside. It all had a festive spark. It's the touches like this that, while not unique, were delivered in such a light-hearted way for World of Warcraft that it never really broke the immersion of the world, but added a lot of character to the experience. Sure, a lot of the Blizzard events would feel a little bit silly, but they always ended up feeling distinct and in-universe. Immersion in Azeroth and its familiar customs, I think, was only heightened by events like this.
I always thought the dumbest fucking event was the turkey event. The Thanksgiving event. There's no fucking point to it. Like, there's no fucking point. It's like you buy food that's not even good. And it's like you just sit around. There's like 1 or 2 items that you were supposed to get. But besides that, the point is to give thanks. Well, I guess next time around we can give thanks to Blizzard for whenever they add a storm out during Thanksgiving, right? That way all the kids can spend their Christmas money on it.
And it served to foster a deep love that many people have with the world. But of course, vanilla was an interesting time, and the minor system changes in this patch are fascinating to look back on. A fundamental change was made, where players would receive credit for killing a monster even if they died in battle. And this was not a bug fix either, this was a genuine design shift. Imagine dying in group content and not getting credit for the boss kill. Rating would be an entirely different
would suck,
if
dude.
not for this change. In fact, I can see
that
it
would
now.
suck, dude. Imagine like you get the debuff from Vale. It's like, hey, sorry, bro. Like, imagine there's 2 DPS warriors in the raid, and like they both need the Helm of Rage or Endless Rage, right? Because they're dumb, they don't have Lionheart Helm. And you see the other warrior get the fucking debuff, you're so happy. You're like, haha, fuck you, idiot. I don't know. I just feel like that'd be so great. Yeah, dying. Well, I mean, to be fair, if you die in MC, you probably don't deserve gear.
20-something hunter, you'd have heard of an amazing quality blue bow found in the Wailing Cavern, so you would have spent a while in the Barrens setting up a group. You and your new friends would have went through all those confusing tunnels, and after clearing a few bosses and beating the real challenge, the infamous jump, you'd end up fighting Lord Cervantes, and right as he got his low health, in your excitement you take one step too far back, and Verdun the ever-living would have killed you, and you'd be dead. You would not have got credit for the kill, and when Venom Strike finally dropped, the warrior would have got it with their greed roll. A pretty distressing way to ruin an evening for sure, and there's no way you'd be playing with that warrior ever again out of a mixture of anger and shame. Thankfully though, this is not something that remained an issue in the game for very long, and really was not much of an issue once raiding actually kicked off. Patch 1.2 also added the ability to purchase other racial mounts at Exalted Reputation, which offered players a chance to go a little bit off script and ride whatever they wanted, provided of course they put the effort in. Gnomes could escape their dreaded Mechanostriders, the noise of which drove many people to madness, and Tauren could hop on Orcs Wolves, increasing their chances of actually making it through doors.
All of the engineering mounts are annoying to hear.
There were race restrictions though, as Blizzard did want to keep the game just not looking too silly. Tauren could not ride skeletal steeds or raptors given their size, and only gnomes could ride the Mechanostriders. The Mysteries of Moradon also implemented the Looking for Group channel, so the players could quickly uncover those mysteries by finding a group in major cities without clogging up general or trade chat. Although, being real, it did little to stem that tide. Many players opted to use trade chat for absolutely everything anyway, be that trading or spreading accusations of ninja looting.
Or, most importantly, spreading the word and gospel of our God Emperor Donald Trump. Okay? Like, if you're on a Kel'Thuzad server and you look at trade chat, it's about Donald Trump. Like, that's it. That's all they talk about. All day, all night, everything. Donald Trump. That's it. And like, it used to be a lot worse, because now you have, like, the right-click report silence thing. But before that happened, holy fuck, that's all people would get into. That was it. How can I send this money to McConnell and not you, my bud? Thank you very much, Farmer T-Rock, for the 1,000 bits. Not much McCool, but anything from my brother. Hope to see you stream soon. Finn the Fox, thank you very much for the $10. I appreciate that very much, man. Indy donated $15. Paladins, Ret are the best class, and McConnell is the best. Thank you very much, Indy, for the 15. Appreciate that. P. Jolter, thank you very much for the $5. Appreciate that. Classic versus BFA. That's a link. I don't click links. Sorry about that. WoW needs more of the next one, DJ MS White, thank you much for $20. Appreciate that. Good job on giving it to that boss, Gordon Ramsay style. It's raw. Now help McConnell get the PC. Thank you very much, man. I like to formal invite you and McConnell to my bris. Let's go to the next one here, and I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. Let's see, Grand Wizard. Okay, I'm not going to read that. Let's see, Trickster Varga. I think I should have $25. Appreciate that. Fourth donation. Did I come to 100 in only a few steps? GZ to all the persons, and more to McConnell, Asmon. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you, thank you. Let's go with McCool. Watch Classic with Creators episode 2. We'll watch Classic with Creators after this, okay, man? Ask you what you think of the next raid tier, not next expansion. Also, what the fuck happened to the Ocean Man in your post? Next raid tier is probably going to be... I'd say probably something that has to... I don't know, honestly. I hope it's not Siege of Thunderbluff. That's the only thing I can say. I just want to get caught up with those before I get too far away.
Before we get on to the more incremental changes, though, there's a portent of the future here. The patch notes say this: additional improvements in looking for group functionality will be added in future patches. Bold of Blizzard to call them improvements, but that's not going to be covered till the next episode, so hold tight.
What?
For now, though, let's go through a ton of the smaller fixes and adjustments in patch 1.2.
Okay.
The game was just so different back then that examining these really just gives us a window into the design of the time. Some of them show off how supremely rough World of Warcraft was at this time, especially in the player experience side. First off, this patch made it so the players afflicted by Hibernate, Fear, and Sap had an increasing chance to break free as the effect went on, so that it would last for about 15 seconds. Now, the variants on the bad end...
That's not true. Okay, the time that Fear breaks is directly proportional to when you need it to break. So if it's okay, if you, like, let's say if you're playing a Warlock, the Fear breaks at 1 second. But if you just got feared by a Warlock, you're running around for 15. That's just the way that it works.
Was really rough prior to this, resulting in a
Drake
very
Dog.
frustrating experience when playing against a crowd control class. Although even with this change and
fucking
Soulfire,
man,
Warlocks did remain to be a pretty frustrating and frightening opponent.
Yeah,
we then have some glaring
sucked.
balance issues being looked at here, the most egregious of which being the Druid Bear form, where the armor bonus needed to be almost tripled in order for them to be an effective tank. And even at that, they still did take more damage than warriors did. In fact, this is a fundamental difference that resulted in a lot of very interesting composition choices. You see, back in this iteration of World of Warcraft class design, hybrids could sometimes actually handle multiple roles, albeit not as effectively as a pure class.
Yeah.
Druids were especially good at this. They had bear tanking and cat DPS under the one feral combat tree. And
that's actually a good point. Yeah, I agree with that.
The druids could be used as a flexible off tank when necessary, and then otherwise perform cat DPS duties. This worked well for emergency situations and led to some interesting raid strategies, and they also had a backup mana pool to throw around some heals too. But of course, the other side of that was that really they weren't going to be your main tank as much. Now, as for some other interesting balance changes affecting warriors, Spell Reflection was originally able to reflect abilities, not just spells, which I'm...
Wait, what? Like, Spell Reflection... Wait. Warriors? Warriors didn't get Spell Reflection until level 64. What? No, they added Spell Reflect in BC. I remember this very clearly. You got it at level 64. We'll see how this is going to go. Okay, Spell Reflect is 100% Burning Crusade. Yeah. Let's see here.
Sure resulted in some very interesting PvP situations, like rogues cheap-shotting themselves. Keep in mind though, at this point in the game, you could not see buffs on enemies without a mage's detect magic, so even if you were wary of Spell Reflect, you still might be caught off guard if you missed the animation. Still on the topic of warriors, Mortal Strike was changed from dealing percentage damage to being weapon damage and a flat amount, something that could have gone very wrong if it was not that way, because if you had a whole bunch of warriors and Mortal Strike was just doing 4 to 5% HP as damage, well, let's just say bosses would not last very long.
That sounds
Blizzard
great.
Would not implement
that's
an
awesome.
uncapped flat percentage damage mechanic again. Now, in return for these nerfs, warriors were granted Pummel, a melee interrupt. This actually meant that warriors could double interrupt with shield bash and Pummel if they had the macro set up to put on a shield, bash, and then go back to their usual weapon during combat. Then over on the economical side of things, it's hard to find exact numbers, but it seems that fishing was a little bit too lucrative in the early days. Blizzard reduced the selling price of fished items and reduced the chance of getting greens while
It's probably
fishing.
just for bots,
it also
I'd
initially
assume.
did not require a minimum level to pick up, and this meant that a low-level character could max out fishing pretty quickly and earn a ton of money. They would, of course, just have to progress
for
while
bots, I'd
avoiding
assume.
mobs in the higher-level
10
zones.
FPS.
Basically,
That's how you know it's
fishing
real.
was just a little bit overlooked, and it needed to be reined in.
Quality of life
As for
changes.
general player convenience, there were some positive changes in 1.2, but they weren't free. Druids and priests who were tired of buffing their group with Mark of the Wild or Power Word Fortitude individually, they were given a new option.
Oh yeah, the Greater
Group-wide
Fortitude.
buffs. They didn't just log in, though, to find
Yeah.
these powerful, lovely, handy new spells.
Yeah, you
no,
needed the
they had to
stupid
find
items
those
for it,
spells
too.
through an item drop. In
Yep.
this case, it was a book that would teach you the spell. For
Yep.
elite mobs and bosses...
Wasn't that an AQ? I'm pretty sure that was an AQ, right? In ZG? I don't know about ZG, but I know it was an AQ.
Above the mid-40 level range, there was a tiny chance that the spellbook would drop, allowing a priest or a druid
Holy
to use reagent,
candles
thankfully
and wild
available through
berries. Dude, I haven't even
vendors,
thought about
to
these.
buff an entire party at once.
EBRS.
Super handy, but sadly for mages with their arcane intellect, or worse still for the paladins who granted blessings with only a 5-minute cooldown, buffing players was still a decently laborious process.
Yeah.
Of course, not that every druid or priest had access to these tomes, as while they were sellable on the auction house, given the nature of the game at this time, I'd say a huge percentage of people playing those classes didn't even know what to look for. While having to find
people were
ancient
stupid
or
back then.
secret knowledge to learn new techniques was great for the RPG feeling of the game, the Mysteries of
sure
Mordor
was.
also altered class fantasy for
great.
one particular class, Warlocks. Demons were now given random names from a huge selection based on type, although in exchange they lost something that was extremely unintentional but ended up aiding the class fantasy of Warlocks being pretty scary.
Yeah.
They lost the ability to kill players during duels, the result of something between pet casts not being cancelled and dot damage coming in at the same time.
I like that.
The duel's 1 HP
I like that.
protection
There it is.
ended. So that's an odd thing that happened. They were
Yeah, you just
terrifying
kill the
enough
people
to
in the duel.
thanks
It's
to their
easy.
toolkit, even without the looming fear of death and the subsequent corpse run. Beyond that, though, this patch ultimately did not change a lot. It fixed a laundry list of issues with items and quests, ranging from reducing the amount of kills needed for a quest, or ensuring that some items had the correct stats. There were little UI changes that made life a bit easier, like arrows in the mini-map being easier to see. Plus, they added an in-game toggle menu for add-ons, but really, it didn't change the landscape of Azeroth. It iterated on it and improved it. So all in all, patch 1.2
It's
was
mostly
carried heavily by
Maraudon came out
Mordon's
on that
edition
patch. That
and
was the
many,
big
many
thing.
fixes. It was, however, only 6 weeks after launch, which is an update cadence that basically no developer could match today. As for whether this trend would
6
continue,
weeks
well,
after
the next
launch.
patch would not be for almost
That's actually
3 more
true.
months. In terms of the subscription fee, that would be like paying for, well, essentially an expansion pack. Would it be worth it? Well, tune into the next episode to find out as we look at more design changes that would change the game greatly and traverse the ruins of Dire Maul. So there
Holy
you go, that
shit,
is episode
man.
2 of our patch retrospective series. If you'd like to help us out with this series, the best way to do that is over on Patreon, and if you go for the $25 tier, then we will be sending physical things to you for the month of August. That does also involve 2 bonus items that I think you'll find to be pretty cool.
Bonus?
And,
Does that
yeah,
mean
just in
it's
general, massive thank you to
Titanforged?
everyone
Oh,
over on
boy.
Patreon. They really do make
Fuck,
these
dude.
larger series a lot more
Watch the Maraudon. She's too fat for me, Machinima. I don't know about that. Let me look up the other with the creators thing, okay? First thing, actually, let me go back. Let me just give some comments on the video. The video actually was... Every single one of these, man.